evening. I'm Diana Bailey, Managing Director of the Maryland Women's Heritage Center. And tonight we're going to be talking with the 2014 inductees into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Our guest tonight is Dorothy Bailey. Hi, I'm Diana Bailey, Managing Director of the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, and tonight I'm interviewing Dorothy Bailey, who is one of the inductees into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame 2014. Dorothy, welcome.
Thank you.
And Dorothy, please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm from Prince George's County. I've lived in the county for almost 50 years. I'm a former Prince George's County Councilwoman, involved in a number of activities in Prince George's County. I have two lovely children, and I'm a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority. And now I serve on the Maryland Park and Planning Commission as Vice Chair for Park and Planning in Prince George's County.
Well, being inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame is a very special deal. So tell us a little bit how you feel about receiving the award, and perhaps a little bit of that connection in your history to being recognized as a member of the Hall of Fame.
I'm just delighted. This is just a special night. It wasn't anything that I was seeking. I knew about it. Several of my friends, people I know very well, Audrey Scott, who served on the council with me, was previously inducted, and a sorority sister, B. Tigna, and Charlene Dukes. And so I was all very excited for them when it happened. And then when several friends suggested my name as a nominee, and I thought, well, you can do the best you can, but we'll see what happens. And then when I was found out that I really had been selected, I really credit those individuals who put the package together, because they did a fantastic job.
It's a very competitive process, and so congratulations.
Yes, they did a fabulous job, and I am elated and excited for myself, for Prince George's County, and for my family. My family's just very, very excited about it this evening.
Well, clearly, probably when you first started your career or work, probably the roles of women were a little bit different than they are today. Tell us a little bit about how things have changed, or how you may have seen that there were some obstacles and how you addressed those challenges.
Well, a lot of things have changed since then, and one of the things is kind of not professionally, but I notice now that women have a lot more flexibility. For example, when I first started my career, I was a housekeeper. I mean, I was working outside of the home, I worked inside of the home, I prepared the meals. But with my family, now with my son, whoever gets home first is the person who prepares the meal in the house. You know, so they don't. A lot of women, younger women, don't have that kind of challenge. I think that when I got married some 50-some years ago, it was kind of expected that I would not only work, but I would take care of the house, and I would do all the cooking.
So extra jobs.
Yes, yes, and I'm just amazed. You know, I go to visit my son and his wife, and he's there cooking, but also the roles of women in the professional field. There were a lot of fields that we just didn't go into, a lot of positions that we did not have, and I see women in those positions now. The world has opened up so much and so vast and so broad now for women.
You've had a very exciting career that's very different in many areas. What do you think would be one of the high points of your career?
I'm one of those individuals fortunate enough that every job I've ever had, I have loved. Every volunteer position I've ever taken, I've really loved. Prince George's was the second region in the nation to establish a sister city relationship with South Africa, and I was instrumental in that. As a matter of fact, I had a South African student had lived with me and had attended
like an exchange student?
Yes, sort of like an exchange student, but because I knew the family personally. And so I wanted to establish that sister city relationship. But I discovered right away, because of apartheid, we could not do that. So once Mandela was released, and once he was elected as president, then we could establish a sister city relationship, and we were the second region in the country to do that. And so that's one of the things I'm just really, really, really thrilled about, and We've done a number of exchange programs with students. They visited us and we visited them, and that sister-city relationship continues. So that's one of the things
That's
I'm
very
really
exciting.
pleased about, yes. And I also got an opportunity to be in the House at the same time as President Mandela, so that's a really special treat, yeah.
Absolutely. It'll
Yeah.
go down in your history
Oh,
as
in
well.
my history. I
As
tell
well.
all my family about it.
Of course, of course. Again, you've been in the workplace for some time, and you're a mature family person. When you were younger or a young adult, who were some of your role models, and why?
Well, first of all, a lot of the teachers that I had, and women in the community who were not educated, but who were very determined, who were always supportive, always loving, always giving. And other than the women in that community that I grew up in, there was Dorothy Height. Dorothy Height was president of the National Council of Negro Women, and I got to volunteer with her for over 30 years, and I learned a lot from her. I traveled on her behalf internationally and represented her at the White House. I mean,
my.
it was just a wonderful experience working with her and listening to her. I mean, I used to get those 5 o'clock in the morning phone calls and where she would give me directions for the day, but I really, really enjoyed working with her. But more importantly, I learned more about public service from Dorothy Height.
And she came to the Heritage Center at one point, so we were so lucky to see another living legend with her gorgeous hats.
Always.
Always gorgeous hats, and great
Yeah.
spirit. So,
Yeah.
again, you're a mature, experienced professional and family person. So, we're also in terms of the Heritage Center, but also in terms of other role models, of which you are now one. What's the message you would like to share with young women of today?
Make sure you have good friends, good relationships. Friendships have certainly been the mainstay for me. There have been challenges, as most of us have at one time or the other, but those good friends that I made in college, good friends I've made in my sorority have always been there. And they've always been the ones who pushed me along, who stood with me, helped me, cried with me, and celebrated my success. So I think that it's just so very important to have really good friends who can be honest with you, who can say to you, I think you need to check yourself, and who are also cheerleaders for you, and can sit and cry when you cry and laugh when you laugh. And I've just had very, very good friends. And I would just suggest to women everywhere that it is important. I mean, yes, it's fine to be married. Husbands are wonderful, but there's nothing like a real good friend.
Right, right. Well, Dorothy, thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you.
Congratulations again on your induction into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame 2014. Have a great celebration tonight.
Thank you. It's an honor.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Our guest tonight is Dr. Renee Fox. Hi, I'm Diana Bailey, Managing Director of the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, and I'm here tonight to talk to Renee Fox, one of the new 2014 inductees into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Welcome, Renee.
Thank you so much.
Hi.
It's a real honor.
Welcome. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I moved to Maryland in 1986 and I'm a physician by training, and I'm trained as a neonatologist, and really got interested over my years in working to improve the health of women and children, babies, and through that then became interested in the upstream issues of social determinants of health.
What does that mean exactly?
So that means where you live, work, play, pray, and learn is very important to your health. So what we know now is that you spend only about 15 minutes in the doctor's office, but you spend the rest of your time out in the community where you live. And so it's very important that children have the best opportunity and can grow up healthy, ready to go to school, and ready to become productive Marylanders.
Being inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame is a very special deal, and we congratulate you again. Tell me what you're thinking about this award and how this came about.
Well, I'm so honored to even have been nominated for this position. There are many women in the physicians who have been members, who've been inducted,
Yes.
and it's a great honor to follow in their footsteps. I think we all learn from the generation ahead of us and those who've supported us as mentees through the years. So it's very much of an honor and totally a surprise.
Good, good. Well, you mentioned some changes along the way, probably in your career as well, but either in the medical field, what are some changes that you've experienced over the years, and perhaps some things that you learned from your role models?
Well, I think I graduated from medical school in 1979, and at the time, our medical school class, there weren't many women in the class. I went to the University of Rochester. I graduated from the University of Rochester, and in my class, there probably were 20 women out of 100.
Out of 100.
Which was a way increase from what there had been just 4 or 5 years earlier. But when you look at the University of Maryland School of Medicine class now, 63% of our women. So there've been huge gains, and I think it's important to learn from, to sort of help support those women, because many of the issues are still there.
You mentioned some of these issues. What do you think some of the obstacles still are for young women going into, let's say, medicine?
Well, I think just combining the work-life balance, it's gotten, there's been a real sort of sea change in how men feel about their careers and what their dedication, that you have to work all the time. And that's definitely changed, and so that has been beneficial for women, but still I think the majority of the work in the home, the child rearing, still happens. I have a terrific husband, and he actually does a lot more than I would have expected.
You're lucky. That's great.
I know.
I'm sure in your career you've had a lot of high points, but tell us about one of the high points you've had in your career.
Well, you mean besides being here tonight?
Well, yes, that's obviously one, but what would be another one that might be in your medical career?
I had the opportunity of having some really good mentorship, kind of in my mid-career, not early on in my career. I was selected to go to executive leadership in academic medicine for women, year-long fellowship. It wasn't full-time, but you went up, and that was a great way for me to learn. I'd been in pediatrics and neonatology, but to see other specialties.
Like a broader area.
Area. And from that, I then decided that I was really interested, again, in why my mother, the parents that we were seeing in the nursery often came back in another NICU. So I began to be more interested in really population health. So I had the opportunity, and I was selected to be a Robert Wood Johnson Health Policy Fellow, which I went to Washington for a year. I took the MARC train and commuted every day because my younger daughter was still in high school at the time. And that, it was just a fabulous introduction to, one, how Washington worked, how you could actually influence policy. And how you could use your background as a physician or as a health professional to help influence that policy. So that was really one of the high points of my career.
You mentioned you had a couple mentors and role models along the way. Tell us about those.
Well,
a couple, or one or two.
When I was thinking about it ahead of time, I was thinking, well, my mother was a role model. My mother had gone to, she was the daughter of immigrants, and she had the opportunity to go to Hunter College, which was a women's college in New York, and then she went to graduate school. And she worked as a chemist during World War II, and then was a teacher. She was a chemistry teacher. But she always worked full-time, and I'm a child of, the 50s and 60s, and that was very unusual at the time. And my mother in our neighborhood was the only mother who was working full-time, and I, at the time, didn't really appreciate that.
Right.
Because she couldn't be my brownie leader.
Right. Those cupcakes that we're missing, right?
Well,
Or
she
not.
made sure we always,
Yeah.
I mean, she couldn't go on class trips, but she was there.
There were other messages that she gave you.
Yeah, and so I think she was my first mentor. And then there were, along the way, in both medical school and residency, other women who were very supportive. I chose pediatrics because there were lots of women in pediatrics. I didn't want to prove myself every day by being a surgeon and proving myself.
Might get distracting, it might, from the work, perhaps.
That has changed. So, many of for women, there are many more, all the specialties have women now. But then my dean, both Dean Wilson, Donald Wilson, and Dean Reese, and President Perman have been great mentors along the way.
Just great. One of the things that we do is also highlight women that are in the Hall of Fame, but also unsung heroines. But we're trying to have young women learn about the women who came before them. So what would be your message to younger women, not just necessarily about being in the health profession, but choosing their path, finding their way, being a role model for somebody else as well?
Well, I think you always have to pay it forward, so that you do need to look out for those that come after you, as well as honoring those who have come before you. It's very important to know your own voice, to choose your career with your heart, with what resonates with you, and then to not, one, to find really strong mentors, and two, to not try to please everybody. Learn how to say no is probably another thing.
That's an important message as well, isn't it? Right.
Yeah.
Well, Renee Fox, Dr. Renee Fox, thank you so much, and
you're
congratulations again
Thank you.
in being inducted at the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame.
Thank you.
Have a great celebration.
All right.
Don't go away. We'll be right back.
Just fine. I'm Kate Stevenson from the Maryland Women's Heritage Center and from Top of the Morning from Baltimore. Wonderful. We are so thrilled, and we want to congratulate you for this award, and tell us how you were feeling with your grandchildren and children seeing what you've accomplished.
Well, I'm thrilled about that, because it's really important for them to know of the courage of the women at Seneca Falls. It's the birthplace of women's rights, and I think they would take great pride in learning more about it. I am myself personally thrilled to be getting this award. I thank Beth and Beverly, co-presidents of the Hall of Fame, for this wonderful honor, and I'm pleased to be joining so many wonderful other inductees today. That's really making it even more thrilling. But as far as Maryland is concerned, that's where I was born and raised, and one of our colleagues from Maryland will be here, Congresswoman Donna Edwards. She'll be coming up. Congress has adjourned, and they're on their way. We thought there might be more activity, but
We want to invite you to the Maryland Women's Heritage Center when you get back to Maryland.
thank you for the invitation. Anytime, I'd love to do that. That's easy from D.C. Thank you for
Well, much
being here.
love from Maryland and Baltimore.
Thank you, appreciate
Well,
you
we're
being
so glad you're all here this morning, and so we thank you for coming, and we're delighted to have the leader as one of our inductees this year. So
Go, Beverly. Hi, Jill and Linda. We're sorry you couldn't be here. We're thinking of you.
Our guest tonight is Susan Gehring. Hi, I'm Diana Bailey, Managing Director of the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, and I'm happy to be interviewing tonight Susan Gehring, who is a 2014 inductee into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Susan.
Thank you so much. I'm absolutely delighted.
Great, and thank you for being here with us tonight. Tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Well, I am currently the Executive Director of the ACLU of Maryland, and I took that job 27 years, well, no, I took the job as a legal director 27 years ago. That's over a quarter of a century. And for 9 years, I was the legal director of the ACLU, but then my boss left and I got promoted and I got to be the director and have been since the mid-90s.
Great.
And so, yeah.
Did you ever practice law, or you were always with the ACLU?
You know what? When I was in 6th grade,
Mhm.
I heard Martin Luther King give his I Have a Dream speech. It was live on TV.
Mm.
And I decided, and I was in the middle of Kansas, and I decided I wanted to be a lawyer, and I wanted to be a civil rights lawyer.
Oh.
And so, so when I graduated from college, I went to law school and ended up being a civil rights lawyer. And it's been a blast.
Important work, very
Yeah,
important work.
yeah.
Being inducted into the Women's Hall of Fame is very important, obviously, and a very big deal. So tell us a little bit about how that happened for you, and who nominated you, and how you feel about this whole
Sure.
thing.
Well, first of all, our good mutual friend Sally Grant,
Ah.
who has been a social activist for years and decades, and then was also our for a very long time was our board chair at the ACLU of Maryland, and was my personal mentor.
Ah,
She nominated me. She was one of the 3 people who nominated me. I also got a recommendation from Gerald Stansbury, who's the chair of, or president of the Maryland Conference of the NAACP. We work a lot with the NAACP in many cases. We do a lot of racial justice work at the ACLU of Maryland. And then the 3rd person was Laura Murphy, who hails from Baltimore City. She grew up there. Her father was the first African-American judge in the city court system. And she ended up growing up with a very activist mother who, it was in the middle of the civil rights movement. She was the youngest child. And she is now the head of the legislative program for the national ACLU, which is that legislative program is based, of course, in D.C.
powerful network.
Oh, it's powerful. And she is a wonderful woman. In fact, I'm thinking about nominating her to the Women's Hall of Fame because she's from Maryland. She's terrific.
Great. Clearly, in the last 30 years, you've seen a lot of changes for women. There are probably still a few obstacles we have to deal with, but tell us some of the changes you've seen, and how you may have handled any obstacles you came across, or for others as well.
Sure. We have done a lot, and thanks to the Commission for Women, who have been stalwarts in that, Maryland has made a lot of progress. I grew up in Kansas, and I was fortunate to have 2 mentors in my life, my parents. My mother had 5 children, but when she finished, she went back to school. She was an English major in college. Went back to school, got her master's in theater, and then
Really?
and then yeah,
Good for her.
and then worked as a teacher for years before she died. My father was a mentor because when I was in 6th grade and I started arguing with him at the table about something, he looked at me and said, "You ought to be a lawyer." And this was in the 1960s when hardly any women went to law school.
Especially in the Midwest.
Especially in the Midwest, probably. Then, when I went to law school in the Midwest, it was the late 70s, and or the mid-70s, I guess. And I decided the only way I could pay tuition and so forth was to work my way through. So I worked a 3/4 time job and went to law school 3/4 time. So I balanced it off. I got a call from the dean of the law school, who said, "Please come in," and wanted to know why I was not going through in 3 years instead of 4. Well, the interesting thing is it was a woman. Sadly, it was a woman, the first woman dean. And I explained to her I didn't have a rich husband, I wasn't married, and I didn't have a rich father, and I needed to work, and that was the end of it, and they didn't do anything to me, so I did it. But it always sticks in my mind because I think we as women need to remember not to draw the drawbridge up when we've succeeded. There was a woman who had succeeded, but she wasn't as sympathetic as I thought she might be to women who wanted to follow in her footsteps.
As you may hear in the background, it sounds like they're setting up for the induction ceremony tonight. So if you hear a little background noise, now you'll know they're setting up for this very special event. So let's go back to our interview. You talked a little bit about some of your high points of your career, but can you pinpoint 1 or 2 that might be special in terms of a turning point, or somehow an aha moment, or something like that?
Sure. Well, as I said earlier, I always wanted to be a civil rights attorney. So when I joined the ACLU, it was the high point of my career. It was 27 years ago, and I was going to be the legal director. And I had a little learning to do because I had done before that a lot of racial justice cases, but I hadn't done First Amendment cases and the Fourth Amendment criminal justice cases and those sorts of things. But I learned as quickly as I could, and I had the best time. 9 years of learning and doing fabulous cases. One of the things I'm proudest of as my legal director career was that we brought 2 lawsuits for poor people that have made a huge impact. So Maryland, as you know, was a slave state. And there's still a legacy of slavery out there. And it has to do with institutions, not personal prejudice so much, but institutions of government. And it turned out that the people who lived in the 14,000 families in public housing in Baltimore City had been in the worst neighborhoods, and their predecessors had been in the worst neighborhoods since the 1930s, FDR's era, when they started public housing. And because Maryland was, before 1954, by law a slave state, by law there was segregation. So all those housing had been built as Negro housing or white housing. But the stigma was still there, and the housing had all been built in mostly African-American neighborhoods, and they were the poorest neighborhoods, and people had not been given a choice to leave. So we started a lawsuit. We over the years, we prevailed, and the judge finally ruled that HUD, we had sued HUD, that HUD had created what he called islands of reservations of, or an island of segregated, isolated, impoverished people, and that was against the law. And so we've been working.
Changed history,
Now
you did.
We did.
Yes, you
and so
did.
now, over 2,000 families, many more children, and many single mothers, which is important for women to know, have moved from those isolated areas in the inner city to areas of opportunity throughout the Baltimore region. And it's made a huge difference in their lives.
In terms of workforce development and economic development for the city as
Exactly.
well.
Yes, exactly. And better schools and better health in those neighborhoods.
One of the reasons we do the Women's Hall of Fame and Women of Tomorrow is to provide messages and role models for young women. So what would be your message or something you wanted to say to young women of today?
I think the thing that I would want to say is we've come really far in many ways, and not all victories have been won. There's still a tax on reproductive freedom. There still is unequal pay for work, the same work that we do as men, and so we've got a lot more battles to fight. One of the things I hope that younger women will do is start paying attention, if they haven't already, to women who are in poverty, wherever they may be, throughout the state of Maryland and the country, because those women really have been, in many ways, left behind precisely because of their circumstance. You know, it's not their fault. And because they're out of the mainstream, they're often very hidden.
Right.
You know, they don't have jobs, they're just subsisting. But I think it's really important to really do that analysis and figure out what can be done so that we build on some of the ACLU's victories so far and, you know, hopefully pull some of them out of poverty.
Right. Well, Susan, I wanted to congratulate you again for being inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame 2014, and then we'll be right back.
Thank you.
It's the Hall of Fame. It's the Hall of Fame.
Our guest tonight is Agnes Kane Callum. Agnes, congratulations on being inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame.
Thank you.
It's fabulous, exciting, isn't it? Tell me a little bit about yourself.
Well,
Tell me about your story.
I don't know if I have it. I don't know if I have a story.
Oh, I know you have a story.
And the books that I authored, about 20-some books, because I put out a journal once a year.
What was the topic of your journal?
The National Flower of the Forest.
Uh-huh.
And it's about a plantation in St. Mary's County.
Oh, so it's about the region of St. Mary's County? Was it about the families that live there?
Yes, and also about another family.
Was it about your family?
Yes, my family.
Tell me about your family.
Well, not too much to tell,
Oh, I bet there's a big story to tell.
but the Calverts brought this young lady from Ireland. I have a terrible cold.
I know, I'm sorry you have a cold. You're doing great, because everybody wants to hear your story.
And the Calverts brought this young lady from Ireland to do his washing and ironing. And she fell in love with the slave next door.
Oh, she did?
And they were married. They were forbidden to be married.
Well, I was wondering about that, yes.
But Franciscan priest married them in a religious.
Oh, as you probably can hear, there's a little bit of noise in the background. It sounds like folks are setting up for the induction ceremony. So, Agnes, this is a very special deal to be inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. How do you feel about that?
Oh, I feel proud.
I would hope so. I would think so. Who nominated you?
That's I don't know.
Oh, you don't know? Oh, well, I guess we'll find out tonight, won't we? Was it someone from St. Mary's County?
It had to be.
Had to be, yeah. Maybe the Historic Society? Well, we'll find out tonight, won't we?
A plantation called Sotterley.
Oh, I've read a little bit about that.
Yeah.
So, was your family right next to Sollery?
They were on
Oh, you were
Sotterley.
on it. I see.
It was
I see.
19 Kings.
Did you go to school in St. Mary's County?
No, I didn't. I was born and raised in Maryland.
Oh, I see. What part of Maryland?
East Baltimore.
East Baltimore. So you're also from
Yeah.
Baltimore. So, when you were a young woman, did you have folks that were your role models, or how did you get into writing books and journals?
My children.
Your children?
Yeah.
How did they get you writing books?
My daughter was going to college,
Mm-hmm.
and every day I would ask her, "What did you learn today?"
Mm-hmm.
And she told me one day that if I wanted to know so much, go out Morgan and register. And I did.
She's tough, isn't
And
she?
that
She's good.
Started me. I had been out of school 28 years,
Mm-hmm.
and that started me to go into
So were you taking writing classes or journalism classes?
No more than none of the other children.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing, in my research paper, I ran across a lot of names that I heard my mother and father talk about.
Back in St. Mary's County.
That's right.
Uh-huh.
They were born and raised there.
Uh-huh.
And that's how I found the Briscoes.
So you were doing a lot of historical research about the families?
Yes, indeed.
Very nice. Well, you mentioned your daughter was the one that got you going back to school after being out of school for a while. Who else helped you in your writing career?
No one.
So you were on your own.
That's right.
So if you were going to give a message to another young woman or another young man who wanted to be a writer or had important stories to tell, what message would you say to those young people?
Persistent.
Be persistent.
Don't give up.
And you did not, obviously. You did
No.
not give up.
Well, when I would be reading one subject, then I saw the need for another subject.
Mm-hmm.
And I kept researching like that.
What were some of your other favorite subjects that you researched?
Geography,
Mm-hmm. Geography of Southern Maryland or St. Mary's County, or geography in general?
general in general.
Mm-hmm. What's your favorite part of the world?
Africa.
Ah,
I went to Africa. I studied in Africa.
you did. What part of Africa?
West Africa.
And which
Mhm.
countries were
University of Ghana. West Africa.
exciting?
Yes, it was.
See, that's part of your very special
was,
story you were going to tell me.
I was a phase. I got it slips my mind now.
That's all right. But you were teaching or you were studying in Ghana?
Yeah.
Did you travel to other countries in West Africa while you were there?
I tried Liberia,
Mm-hmm.
which has a connection with the United States.
Are they sister states? Or what's the
United States purchased land in 1824 for slaves. If they wanted to leave the United States and go back to Africa, they had land there.
Land there. Did very many African Americans do that?
Yes.
Really? Quite a few.
And so many from Maryland.
Really?
They have a Maryland county.
Oh, I see. Well, see, that's a very important piece of history. I appreciate you telling us about that.
And I wrote an article about that. I used to write for the Catholic Review.
Oh, I see.
And I would pick up pieces of information like that. But my main thing was British. I wrote it. I'm still writing.
That's great.
I went to Liberia, the Ivory Coast, Nigeria.
So you have many more stories to tell, don't you?
Yes, and I'm writing them.
So when you write, do you write by hand or you use a computer
I
now?
write by hand.
You write by hand?
Then I use a computer.
And then the computer, right?
And then I read the computer
Right.
twice.
Very nice. Well, we appreciate you telling us your story tonight. We want to thank you again, Agnes, for being here, and congratulations on being inducted to the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame 2014. And we are very proud of you.
Thank you.
So we'll be right back, and thanks again. Have a great celebration tonight. Our guest tonight is Ann Cipriano Reese. Hi, I'm Diana Bailey, Managing Director of the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, and I'm pleased tonight to be talking to Ann Cipriano Reese. Congratulations, Ann, on being inducted into the 2014 Maryland Women's Hall of Fame.
Thank you very much.
So, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I grew up in Providence, Rhode Island. My parents were from Italy, so I grew up in a very strict Italian Catholic environment, and everything was about the family. Everyone lived probably within a radius of 1 mile, the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, grandma, and so I really was not exposed to very much until I got married and moved away from Providence, Rhode Island, and that was an eye-opener.
That's when you came to Maryland?
Yes.
And what year was that about?
Probably in the 70s. Probably in the 70s. I can't remember exactly when it was that we came here.
And then what were you doing when you first came to Maryland?
Well, I was raising 3 little ones, so I wasn't working. And then I remember one day telling my husband that I thought maybe I should work. I wasn't around my family anymore. I was lonely. And he says, well, you know, you've got 3 children and no one's going to hire you. And then his father said, you can't provide for your wife, that she has to go to work.
Oh, those
That's when
messages.
I realized, and where we lived in Southern Maryland, that men basically, I don't know what word I want to use, men did not approve of a woman leaving the house. They felt that the husband could provide for them. It was the good old boy network where we lived in Southern Maryland.
Yeah.
And I remember my mother-in-law, when she retired, came to work for me because I had my own interior design firm. And my father-in-law would park the car outside of my store and toot the horn. He would not step foot in the store. And I think until he died, he believed that women should be at home.
Even though you were an entrepreneur,
Yes.
he just
Yes.
didn't think it was quite right, huh? Well, it's interesting, and again, that probably is a part of your history that led you to be inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. So tell me how you got nominated, who nominated you, and how you feel about receiving this special award
The
and
young lady
recognition.
that nominated me is about half my age. So if someone, say my peer had nominated me, I would say that's great. But when someone half your age nominates you, it means, I think, a lot more, that they think so much of you. And the person that nominated me is service-driven. So I see her now following in my footsteps, and hopefully one day she'll be here with all of you.
Great.
And so I'm very happy about that. And I think she nominated me. I don't even know why. because we just opened up our first domestic violence house in Charles County.
I think that's probably a
And it
piece of
was-
why you're here.
And it
It's
was
very
long in
important.
coming. I was on a committee, and then I chaired the committee from probably the late 70s, and here it is, 20 years later. We're just getting our first registered domestic violence house. It's been open since July. It's filled to capacity. And I'm hoping, again, with this award and this recognition, that our local politicians will say, okay, we've got one, now we need another house. This isn't going to stop. People out there know it took 20 years to get one. So we'll see what happens.
Well, see, your voice was very important in that plan, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Cool.
And the house is named after a friend of mine who was killed by her daughter's boyfriend. So it's even more special to me because she was a victim's advocate. She worked for the state's attorney's office. And so I'm really pleased.
Congratulations,
about that.
that's very important, especially with that personal story that's attached to it. I know that was probably one of the high points of your career. Were there a couple other high points in your career that you'd like to
I
share?
guess opening my own business was certainly a high point. And I guess every woman's going to say her children are another high point
Sure.
in her career, but...
Part of balance, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But doing the things I can do for, domestic violence where we live, and being lucky enough that I've never had to, worry about anything like that. But and helping the homeless, that's another big thing where we live, especially women who are homeless. And seeing they have the homeless shelter for men, we've got a rundown shelter for women. I mean, there's so much more for men. The recovery house for men, no recovery house for women. So again, it's...
Sounds to me like that's why you're here, for all the things you've contributed to.
There's a lot more to do.
Right. Well, I think sometimes what happens in some of the smaller counties, women especially are more invisible, particularly if they have special needs. So I'm so glad that you as a local were able to address some of those special needs. Who were some of your role models as you were going along, either in school or as you were going into your business or recently?
Well, let's see. Growing up, it was always my mother and my grandmother. And my mother and my grandmother were always in the kitchen with the apron on and the rosary beads. And when you're 5 years old, you want to be just like them. And then you get older, you go to school, and you realize, I want more than that. And then when we first moved to Maryland, and the one woman I met who actually started Zonta of Charles County, Marlene Hunter, who's not a well woman, I remember the first time I met her, I was in awe of her and all that she had done. And she wouldn't let anybody stand in her way. And to this day, I admire her because she also had a lot of problems. Her husband wasn't well. She had a daughter who was quite ill. She had Lyme's disease and never got past being a 12-year-old, but she never let that stand in her way to help other people and do the things she wanted to do, especially with her career. And
She was sounds like quite a role model.
yes.
For you and other people probably too.
Yes. And another person that I admire a lot and is Mother Virginia Marie and Mother Mary Joseph. They're prioresses at Mount Carmel. My son is buried there. And to keep me busy, I helped them raise a few $100,000 to start a prayer garden and do some other things. But the idea of somebody 24/7 just, devoting their whole life to God and to prayer and to making people feel good no matter what the situation is. And they turned everything around when my son died and made me feel like I was the unlucky one. I was still here. And
So you turned tragedy into something sounds productive for other people as well. Amazing.
Yeah, and then one other lady, if I can just mention her.
Sure.
Her name is Sandy Washington, and she heads Lifestyles of Maryland, and she takes care of the homeless, she takes care of the women that are abused, she takes care of little children. And she just went through cancer for the second time, went through chemotherapy, but she was out in the woods in the cold of the winter recently, putting up 127 tents for these women and their children with solar-powered showers. I mean, she does not let anything stop her. So I admire her so much, and she's the one who's managing Gail's house.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so...
Do the young women in your county know about you and your role models?
A lot of the young women know about me because I try to stay involved with the young people, especially those that I know want to be involved with service. And there's so many things happening now from middle school on. I mean, and next Saturday, I guess it is, the 29th, one of the middle schools, the Milton Summers Middle School, is having a program for women leaders to help encouraging these young women leaders that are
Oh,
still
great.
in middle school, and they pull these kids out that are exceptional, but some of them lack self-esteem, some of them don't have a good home life, so it's all those things.
So you're nurturing the next
Yeah,
generation.
And I think, too, God didn't give me grandchildren, but He gave me everybody else's children to help with.
Right, right. Well, you mentioned a lot of the young women, but what would be a couple of the messages you would like to give other young women, not maybe just in your county, but across the state of Maryland?
I think one of the biggest things that I've seen, the internet is good, but social media isn't. And I've seen so many young ladies, even where we live, be so taken back when somebody says something to them, and what they don't realize is just ignore them, do what's right in your heart, be passionate about what you believe in, and someday you're going to be something. You can be anything you want to be, and these people who are bullying you, they may not be anything, but they have to really believe in themselves, and they really need people to encourage them on a day-to-day basis. They may not be getting it at home, and I think that's one of the biggest things.
Great, thank you so much, and congratulations again
Thank
on
you.
being inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame.
Thank you very
Enjoy the celebration tonight.
Thank you.
We'll be right back. Our guest tonight is the family of Henrietta Lacks. This is a very special story tonight. Good evening. I'm Diana Bailey, Managing Director of the Maryland Women's Heritage Center, and I'm pleased tonight to be talking with Lawrence Lacks. He's the eldest son of Henrietta Lacks. Welcome, and congratulations on Henrietta being inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame. How did all that happen?
Well, I guess this goes back when time back in there when I really don't know how it all started. I started from the book, I imagine. But the way I feel, I just want to just thank most of the people that made it possible for her to get the awards, to get the Hall of Fame.
Right. Tell the listeners a little bit about what's in the book, in case they haven't read it. What was her story that made this so special, and why is she being recognized now? What did she do to be in history?
Well, my niece, she would know more about that because that's mostly in the science field, and they explained to them why they became famous, and it took a long time, took 30 years for them to find out who Henrietta Lacks was.
Well, she was involved in a research project, is that right?
Well, no, she wasn't no research. She had died of cancer.
Yes.
And they taken her cancer cell without approval from the family, and a little later on in the years what had happened, everything in Johns Hopkins was exposed to the Helios cell. They made it a Helios cell. So therefore they researched, trying to find out who it belongs to. For 25 years they never knew who the cell belonged to.
Because they didn't ask her permission, is that right?
No, that was the beginning of it.
That was the beginning of it.
When in Johns Hopkins, they taken a cell from her body, that's to have it autopsy on it, And
she was very young when she died, wasn't she?
Yeah, 31.
31, very young, very young. Did she have children then?
Yeah.
How many children?
She had David. She had about 4 then. 4.
Well, you can hear some of the folks are setting up for the induction ceremony, but let's get back to Lawrence a second. So he's talking about Henrietta Lacks. So how do you feel, or how does your family feel with her being inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame?
Everybody feels wonderful about that. The Hall of Fame, they did great. Everybody congratulate everybody on it,
Right.
It was great. I feel wonderful.
Because she contributed to history as well as to science, whether she knew about it or not, but it was important to probably many cancer survivors today.
Yes, it's very important all over the world with cells.
Lawrence, thank you again for talking with us, and then we're going to interview another member of your family.
Oh, thanks a lot.
Oh, this is Diana Bailey again. I'm happy to also have Jerry Lax, who is the granddaughter of Henrietta Lax, with us today. So tell us a bit more about your grandmother's story.
It's an amazing story. My grandmother passed when she was 31 years old. Her cells were taken without her knowledge and without her consent. 20 years after they were taken, the family found out that her cells were taken, and they found out by accident. If they didn't find out by accident, no one would have never told the family that her cells were actually being used to heal herself.
How did you find out?
Well, my aunt, which is my uncle Henrietta's oldest son, wife, was at dinner, and she had a conversation with a gentleman, and she had introduced herself, and he was like, Lex, I know that name from somewhere, and they just started talking, and he said, you know what, that's it. I'm working on a young lady named Henrietta Lax, her cells.
You're kidding.
And they got into the conversation, and she left, ran out the house, and told her husband, and from there, the family was trying to find out information about the healer cells.
Which is fabulous, important research, but the story behind it is a little disconcerting, isn't it?
It is
Yeah.
bothersome. Yeah.
So how did the book come about? And do you like the book and how they handled your grandmother?
Yes, I love the book. It all started with my Aunt Deborah. She was on a quest to find out who her mother was and find out information about her sister. Rebecca Skloot wanted to know about Henrietta Lax, and she wanted to know about Henrietta Lax's family. So Rebecca got in touch with Dr. Roland Batillo from Morehouse School of Medicine, to see if he could contact the Lax family, or if she could contact the Lax family, and he kind of gave her some pointers as far as how you should handle this situation, because it's a little delicate as far as what the family had went through so far, as far as with people coming asking the family information but not giving the family information. They ask us for information, but they don't want to give us information.
I see, yeah.
So when they got on that quest, Deborah and Rebecca, it was a journey to find out information about Henrietta Lax and find out information about Elsie.
Her story. Her story, yeah. What else about, we know the science part of her story, but do you have other stories of your grandmother?
Actually, we don't know much about my grandmother. We found out information about her through the book. We knew, we look at this picture, the famous picture, the only picture that we have of her. We know she was beautiful from the picture, well dressed, but just to know the smallest details, as far as like she was small built, small feet, she loved red nail polish, she loved to dance, she loved to cook. So those little bits and pieces you can kind of put together and kind of get an idea.
So for the bits and pieces that you know, and as her granddaughter as well, what message do you think, if she were here tonight, she would give to her family, but perhaps more importantly to other young women? What might she say?
I guess she would let them know that whatever they're trying to pursue, they have to have determination, be persistent, and have the desire to pursue what they're trying to, their goal.
And what would she say about being inducted into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame?
I think she would just be so excited, just knowing that she is being recognized, she is being honored with so many courageous women in her achievement, and she achieved so much unknowingly, didn't know. Yes, so that's the I guess the wonderful part about her being inducted.
Also, so many other boys and girls, women and men will know more about her story, not just the ones that read the book, but also she'll be in the Hall of Fame, there'll be the videos, but also more students will learn about her and her contributions.
Exactly. This is like another social, like another media outlet to get her story out there.
Right. Well, I imagine her family is very excited tonight, and we're very pleased for you, and congratulations again to the family of Henrietta Lax.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yay.
And we'll be right back.
Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome and escort the legend, Miss Billie Holiday, into the Maryland Women's Hall of Fame.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good evening. and thank you for permitting me to be with you tonight, allowing me to accept such a prestigious honor on behalf of the late Billie Holiday and her estate. Words cannot adequately express my gratitude for such a beautiful gift. I will treasure this magnificent bowl, and it will forever remind all that gaze upon it the legacy of Billie's many contributions. To and on behalf of the Commission for Women, I would particularly like to express my appreciation to the entire Commission for this wonderful tribute to Billie's life and senseless work.
Congratulations again. Thank you so much, Bernice.
Hi, I'm here with Bernice McKay, and she's the president of the Billie Holiday Estate. Billie Holiday was one of the honorees here tonight. Bernice, can you tell us, how is this award, what does it mean to the estate of Billie Holiday?
It means a lot to us because she's been honored. I also went to accept the stamp when they made the stamp for Billie Holiday. I also went, I've been to a lot of things that they did inducting Billie Holiday into different things. And it means a lot to the whole estate because there's some more on the estate besides me, his sons and all. And this honor tonight was really very nice. You know, I thought it was I really enjoyed it, you know. And I just think it was grand. And I did enjoy it, and I like to see her honored. And I'd like to see more things done for her in Baltimore because she was born there. I feel as though there should be a Billie Holiday theater, a Billie Holiday maybe drug program, because that's where she got involved in, or Billie Holiday Child Care Center. I would like to see her name go up in Baltimore. That would be my greatest desire.
I think those are both wonderful ideas.
Okay.
You know, how do you think something like that can get started?
Well, I would have to talk to like state senators or people that can get those grants to, you know, there's where I get started. It would have to be people that gets grants to build theaters and to build things.
But you could also give maybe a phone number out where people could.
I think that is an amazing idea. We have a large amount of people in Baltimore that are in trouble because of the drugs. And Billie Holiday is such an icon.
Yeah, and her name should be in Baltimore somewhere.
She had that problem, and
she did have it. Very
with
bad
that,
problem.
I think that it would open up new doors and avenues for those people who do have those issues, and I think a wonderful idea.
Okay.
Any last words on tonight?
Well, tonight I thought it was a very nice program, and I enjoyed it. I just didn't talk as long as I should have, but you know, I was just her representative.
It was wonderful.
Wonderful.
And we thank you. What do you think, I just have to ask this, what do you think keeps Billie's memory
Well, she was the greatest jazz singer was ever around. She started jazz singing. That's one thing that keeps her alive. And that's all over. I was on the Queen Mary, the boat, you know, on a cruise.
Yes.
They played her all day. They say in Japan, her records just sell like crazy. That was English boat. Everywhere I go, Billie Holiday, you know. So she is an icon. She will be around for a while.
All right.
For a long time.
And you heard that from the lady herself.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed the show tonight and you'll be joining us again. This is Diana Bailey from the Maryland Women's Heritage Center. Good night.